today, which is Jacqueline Peters. And Jacqueline Peters it is a great honor to welcome her again at our very, very first webinar 3 years and a half ago, where we were simply having a bridge line with 20 participants, nothing more than that. Jacqueline was our very first speaker ever. I remain deeply grateful to her that she had the sympathy and the courage to be the first speaker for a much smaller crowd. Now we have more than 200 people at our webinar, so welcome back, Jacqueline. It's a great honor. Jacqueline has more than 20 years of experience as a leadership coach specialized in team and organizational effectiveness. She's a doctorate in team and leadership development and executive coaching. She's the president of Interactive Leadership Associates, and last but not least, she also wrote a great book on high-performance relationships. We've talked a lot about competences and about personal preferences and about interactions, but not so much yet about relationships, high-performance relationships. So, Jacqueline, it is with a lot of gratitude that I'm offering you the floor for your presentation. I will monitor the question. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Carl and Elizabeth, who do such a wonderful job of coordinating these events. We owe so much to them for these communities of practice. And I am delighted to be here with all of you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I want to
we don't see your screen yet.
Okay.
Elizabeth, have you shared the button?
Okay. You know what? I will just open it here.
Elizabeth, have you shared the screen with Jacqueline?
Yeah, there we go.
I have, and I just gave it back to you.
Okay, is it coming now?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So for me, it all started with this one ratio, 5-to-1. 5 positive to every negative comment or interaction. And this was some work done by Marcial Lasada, who was studying business teams in their natural setting and having team meetings, and he just was observing them. What did he notice about how they interacted and how they communicated? And he had a lot of different observations. But
I still see a black screen, Jacqueline. I don't see any slides.
I am seeing your screen, Jacqueline.
Okay.
Okay.
So
all the participants do. Yes, the participants seem to see the slides. Okay, go on.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that, Carl. Yeah, so this 5-to-1 ratio was striking to me because it's also the ratio when I was studying couples. I've done a lot of work with couples enrichment over the past 20-some years with my husband, and this ratio came up in the couples work we were doing as well, of 5 positive to every negative interaction. That those teams, like Marcial Lasada had, that had 5-to-1 positive to negative, the ones that made the most money and had the most customer satisfaction and employee engagement, is the same ratio of 5-to-1 that really successful long-term happy couples have in their interactions, 5 positive to every negative. In fact, one of the markers of divorce that John Gottman, who was the researcher who had observed this interaction ratio, found that 1-to-1, 0.8-to-1 was a marker of an unsuccessful couple who was headed for divorce within the next 6 years. So this is a very predictive ratio about how effective teams and couples are, and I started to think about, what about any other team? You know, whether it's this business team or a family team, a team of couples, which I really see as a team with benefits when it's going well, friends, and even in the business relationships and the marketing relationships that people create with us, I wanted to see what were some of the themes in all of those relationships that could really inform us
Jacqueline,
as coaches.
Jacqueline, sorry to interrupt you again, but could you click down your GoToWebinar application so that people see your full slide? I get feedback that they don't see the full slide because probably at the right of your screen the application is still open.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. How do I click it down?
That's a good question. As normally this should be should be somewhere above the possibility to click it down.
If you go up to View on your control panel, you can find Auto Hide the Control Panel, or just Hide the Control Panel. There you go. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, but this doesn't want to get away. Okay, we're just, sorry folks.
No problem.
All right, so let's look at what we know about the themes of all teams and all relationships. This is the work that I did when I did my doctorate and what I found in all of the reading and work that I've done there. So basically, I've summarized it into these 5 key building blocks: safety, purpose, structure, camaraderie, and repair. And these 5 building blocks, no matter what you read or what you do, what I found over the last 5 to 6 years is everything can fit into them. So this is a system that we can really use to organize the research. I was at the Science of Coaching, which was a wonderful event that Elizabeth Jackson and her team all put on through ICF, and I was listening to the other presenters, and what I heard were all things about relationships, teams, coaching, presence, and they all fit into one of these 5 building blocks. So I found time after time it's a great system to organize what you're learning about high-performance teams or really strong relationships. The second thing that you can use the 5 building blocks for is you can use it to assess. As you listen to your clients, what they talk about, how they talk about it, you can start to listen for, are they talking about safety issues or purpose issues or camaraderie? What seems to be going on in that team or in that relationship that needs some support? And the third is, as you listen, you assess, you can then interact and intervene in a way that you can help them focus on strengthening the building blocks that are strong and also to help them develop some of the building blocks that might be weaker in their relationship and team bridges. So what I love about this system is it's effective with teams, it's effective with one-on-one relationships. When I work with leaders and they may have a direct report who they're having some issues with, it works for all of those. So I want to take you through, and this is your first coaching tool that you can use in coaching your people, either individually or with the team, and you can share this with them to give them a framework and a vocabulary for thinking about their team and what they need to focus on. So when we talk about high-performance teams, what do we really mean? The work of Richard Hackman and Ruth Wegman, who have done an enormous amount of work on teams and high-performance teams, they've defined a high-performance team, and this definition is taken and just slightly modified from theirs. And the first part of a high-performance team is, do they get the results? Because the number one thing that we need to deliver is we need to deliver on what it is we're expected to do together. So that's number one. But it's not sufficient. It's necessary, but it's insufficient to be a high-performance team. So we all know teams we've been on where we get the results, but we never want to be with those people again. So the second piece is we need to feel engaged and committed. And high-performance teams have strong engagement and commitment to each other. In fact, a lot of leadership teams, when the primary leader leaves, what we find is that one or more of the other people on that team will follow that leader to the new organization. There's such high engagement and commitment. They want to work together. the context is less important than the people. That's what really helps to define a high-performance team. And the third is growth and development. And especially in today's world with the industries that change and grow so much and so quickly, if you're not growing, you're dying as a business. And so the third key factor to be a high-performance team is ongoing growth and development, individually as members of the team, as well as a team and as a group. Do you learn together? So the big question is, are we building bridges or are we building walls in our teams and relationships? And what we find when we get called in to support teams, and this is what happens for me when I get called into a team, is there's sometimes a mix of that going well, building bridges, and also building walls. And so this is sometimes what I see happens with some of the teams that I work with, and maybe is what you see happening with some of the teams that you work with. So I'm interested to know, and Carl's going to help me out with this, what are a few things that concern you most about coaching teams, particularly when they present to you and say, we have some relationship issues, we have some conflict. What are some of the things that concern you most? And Carl, if you can read out a few of the things that are coming up.
Yes, yes, please, shoot. The complexity, power differentials, getting to the root cause, personalities, wow, unwillingness to change self-behavior, the other is wrong, lack of common vision, purpose, listening to one another, personality, passive-aggressive conflict, politics, they avoid conflicts, wow, now it's really going fast,
Yeah.
trust has been broken, not listening to each other, old conflicts, time restrictions, barriers imposed by upper management, leadership dysfunction, hidden agendas, provoking one better than other. Does that give a
Perfect.
an image to you?
Yes, perfect. So
Thank you so much for your input.
Yes, thank you everybody. So with the concern that you have in mind, I want you to listen to the rest of this conversation that we're having, mostly one way, unfortunately, dialogue that we're having, but listen for which building block does your issue or concern relate to, because as I listen to those, they definitely all relate into one of the 5 building blocks. So listen to what you're hearing and let's see if you can assess within this framework of the 5 building blocks. And so when we think about what happens with teams and that carnage that we saw in this picture here, the carnage is often created by different politics and status and power differentials, as you all talked about, and sometimes team member qualities, those personality traits and frictions that you mentioned can get in the way. So when we think about which team member quality is actually least correlated with team effectiveness, what do you think it is? Smart, agreeable, open-minded. It's actually smart.
Yes, I got a lot of winners here with smart, yes.
Yes, perfect. So smart, and this is a bit of controversial research that started to come out of Harvard. Virginia Woolley and her team, they've been looking at how do we create collaborative collective intelligence and what contributes to collective collaborative intelligence and what detracts from it. And what they found was when they put really smart people together, that did not necessarily make the smartest team. That in fact other factors were more important. Interesting enough, some of the factors that were more important than having high individual IQs were things like having high socio-emotional intelligence. So having more women on a team often made them have greater collective intelligence, collaborative intelligence. And the other piece was around having turn-taking and having people really be able to contribute in equal ways. So these are things that are important for us to remember when we're trying to create team effectiveness. just letting people know that having the smartest people in the team doesn't always make them the most effective is a bit of an eye-opener for teams. So when you share that with a team, make sure you say what could contribute to that and really find out and have them kind of bring in their own thinking around this, because particularly if you're working with senior leadership teams, most of them are smart. And we don't want them to feel shame about this, but we want them to be aware it takes some conscious effort to be a good team member. So let's take a look at this carnage in a little more detail. And the faces of the carnage of those teams that sometimes look like that, here's some of the things I hear. So Sam represents the people who talk about things like, you know, on our team, we just don't have enough respect. We don't know enough about each other's talents, and we need to find out more. That's the kind of things that we often hear. Sam represents that. And then we have Sue, and Sue represents statements like, you know what, we talk about wanting to have new ideas, but the first time a mistake happens, we're out there finger pointing and blaming. And we hear things like that. Paula represents the kinds of statements like, you know what, the problem with our team is that we don't have mutual goals. In fact, sometimes we're at cross purposes with our goals, and so we're not all walking and running in the same direction. Then we have someone like Steve, or people like Steve, who represent statements like, you know what, the problem with our team is that we don't have clear roles and responsibilities. We just don't know who's doing what. Sometimes we're stepping on each other's toes, and sometimes things fall through the cracks. Then we have people who make statements like Chris makes, who says, you know what, the issue with this team is that we just don't have enough fun together. And unlike Steve, I think that the best teams are the ones that just pitch in and help and are not so structured about having everything clearly delineated with roles and responsibilities. And then finally, you might hear statements on your team of carnage like Randy. Randy represents those people who've got some bad feelings on the team. Randy, in this case, is the leader of the team, and he's been moved from another department, and he looks at these faces and hears these things that they're complaining about and says, you know what, I had a great team, and now I've been moved into this area of the business, and I feel like I'm being punished with all of these people whining about what they want different with the team. So those are some of the statements that you might hear in your teams, and let's start to assess and categorize these. So let's start with safety. This is the core building block of a high-performance team and relationship, and safety is the foundation of the team relationship bridge. Without safety, none of the other building blocks are very secure. So when we say safety, what do we really mean? And Amy Edmondson, in her book on teaming, talks a lot about how we need to create a safe environment, and I think her definition is a really positive one. Safety is a climate in which people feel free to express relevant thoughts and feelings without fear of being penalized, without fear of repercussions. Psychological safety is as important as physical safety, and so that's a nice entry for some of the organizations that I work with who kind of look at this psychological safety thing as a bit touchy-feely, and this represents what some of my clients feel like. I tripped and fell into some feelings, but I'm okay now. I brushed that crap off. And so a lot of leaders will say to me, you know what, I don't want to talk about this feelings thing. I don't want to talk about psychological safety. It's all a little bit too touchy-feely. And the bottom line is, number one, from a legislative point of view, harassment, bullying has been legislated throughout most countries in the world in the workplace. And so you need to focus on it from that perspective. But just this idea of psychologically safe workplace also creates a framework where people can have better conversations, and the research is it leads to greater physical safety. So that's a way to talk with your clients who kind of shy away from this safety stuff. And here's how I explain it. The bottom line is that safety is a feeling. We can't control it. Safety is that absolute innate, primal, reactive response when we're interacting with someone or interacting in the team that really makes us either move away or move towards people. And that leads us to the decision to trust. And I think that we often talk about trust as the basis for teams. And I think that really we have to go a little deeper. That trust is developed as a result of having ongoing moments of safety with each other. And if we can focus on creating safety, then we create the environment that builds trust. Once people have decided not to trust someone else on the team or in the relationship, it's often very difficult, hard to repair, and if we can intervene when we see those unsafe moments where people kind of twitch or kind of move away from the conversation and go, hey, I just noticed, you know, you kind of moved away. What's on your mind? Can you weigh in? And use our great coaching questions, we can start to draw people out, make them feel safe, and keep them in the game. I'm going to quickly just go over some of the high level of what we know from the neuroscience. And what the neuroscientists tell us is that the brain is organized basically around two key functions. Number one, we either move away from threat or towards reward. And everything that happens in the brain is really oriented around these two things. And so we start to feel safe or unsafe. And our brain is constantly tracking and trying to figure out, is this a safe situation? Is it not a safe situation? If it's unsafe, we get the 3 F's, which are fight, flight, freeze. We've also learned that physical pain is experienced in the brain and it looks in the brain when we do functional MRIs. The pathways are very similar to what's activated in emotional pain. So if the same sort of pathways are activated for physical pain as emotional pain, what that tells us is psychological safety, social injustices are felt by people just as strongly as physical pain. That's the case for really managing psychological safety. So here's your next coaching tool, and I love using this with teams, and I ask them, what are your safety busters and safety builders? And what I focus on is, I used to ask people, just name some of the ones that come to mind. Now I go around and I have teams actually share their own personal #1 safety buster and #1 safety builder. And teams learn a lot as they go around taking turns, listening to each other about what it is they can do that can contribute to people feeling safer and what they need to avoid so that they don't trigger someone into feeling unsafe. I was just with a team recently and the leader had written down the safety busters and builders, and when something happened in our team session, he immediately said, oh, you know what, I'll use a fake name. I know that John really would prefer that we would talk about that in a different way, and he redirected the conversation knowing that it was a bit of a safety buster for one of the people in the room. So great coaching tool. So we talked a little bit about, you know, how we create safety, how we destroy safety. Which behavior is most toxic, do you think, of these three, that causes the most conflict and that predictably destroys team safety? Because on personality style assessments, we often do them. They're very helpful, but most of the time those behaviors are not actually research proven to either contribute or detract from team effectiveness, except for a few things. And so which one of these behaviors?
I get mixed answers.
Okay.
I get some perfectionism, and I also get some disregarding norms.
Okay.
But slightly in favor of perfectionism.
Okay, interesting. Yes, perfectionism definitely can be a trigger for people. The behavior, though, that kills team safety the most is disregarding norms. So what that means is when people finally become explicit in a team to say, here's how we're going to work together, like we're going to start meetings on time, or, you know, we're going to send out our agendas 1 week in advance, when they make explicit agreement to those and then team members disregard those, don't follow those, that is one of the key things that destroys team safety. There's 3 things. The second one, so disregarding norms is critical. The second one is being overly negative, and the third one is withholding effort. Those 3 behaviors predictably destroy team effectiveness, even if everybody else on the team is doing the right behaviors. One person doing any of these behaviors impacts. So what I love about sharing this information with teams, and I like to do it at the beginning of working with the team, is I start to set the stage with the science. And this is why I love the science and I'm so interested in it, because lots of people have ideas and they have lots of opinions about what contributes to team effectiveness and what detracts. And I just love, we know exactly what contributes and detracts. The science of 50 years has told us. And so when I can put this out right at the beginning before anybody's called out one way or the other, it actually is a bit of a checking mechanism for team members who might be doing some of these behaviors. What I notice is they act a little differently after we've had this kind of a beginning overview of the factors that develop high-performance teams. So that actually can be a really important tool for you to use. So we've talked about what destroys team effectiveness. What about what qualities most correlated with team effectiveness? Remember I said those style assessments, they are often not predictive, except for these. There are some things we know predict team effectiveness for some personality traits. What do you think it is? What are you seeing, Carl?
I'm not seeing a lot. Yeah, okay, it's coming in. Openness, 3 times openness, all of the above. Consciousness, openness, openness, consciousness. First impression is that there's a slight preference for openness.
Okay, so yes, there's 3 key qualities here: agreeableness, openness, conscientiousness, and it is all of the above. We know for sure these 3 traits do support team effectiveness. Agreeableness doesn't mean I'm a yes man, which is what the objection I usually get from a lot of team members is they go, hey, does that mean we have to say yes to everything? What it means is there is a willingness to go along when it's important to contribute to the team effectiveness. It doesn't mean I say yes to everything, but I have a way of presenting things in a way that is positive and agreeable. Open and conscientiousness. Doing what I say I will do is absolutely critical for team effectiveness. So those 3 qualities. So let's go back to Sam and to Sue. Remember in those Faces of the Carnage, Sam talked about we just don't respect each other. Sue talked about, you know, we want to be sharing ideas and taking risks, but we do too much finger pointing and blaming when things go wrong. As you listen to those, here's the assessment part. That's really about safety. And so when we hear those complaints, we know that that building block of safety needs to be reinforced. I've got a whole list of safety strategies, and the one I want to pull out for you as a coaching tool is slow it down. Slow down your state your emotional state, and your story. So some of the concerns that you put forward is, you know, we need to figure out ways to help teams deal with conflict and personality issues and so on. And so I teach them the safety strategies. It's a framework for them to use to monitor their conversation. So when we say slow down, one of the tools that I share with teams is to say, you know, monitor your thoughts. Sometimes we're just neutral. We're in a meeting, things are going along, and, you know, we might hear something positive. So, you know, we use the color green to connote there's something positive. I'm in a good space. I move from maybe that neutral white place to green thinking. Then I might hear something that I go, whoa, I don't know how that's landing for me. That doesn't sound like it's really supportive of my area of the business. So maybe we get a little on guard. We get a little yellow in our thoughts and our thinking. Or if we get really triggered, we might go to red, where things start to break down, and when we get into the red, I'm not feeling safe here, people aren't listening to me, they've just dismissed my comment, and we're in that very red thoughts, emotions, and state. That's when things start to go awry. When we're in that red state, the number one thing we can do is slow it down. Slow down, notice what we're thinking, name it. You know, oh, I'm starting to feel a little frustrated, I'm not sure I'm being heard here. And if we can teach our clients to use this as a tool, as a team, giving them permission to call out these safety moments, then they start to be able to have a dialogue and a conversation that's a little more productive. So coaching tool number 3 is identify and name your state, give them a vocabulary for it. The key is we can manage up and down these thinking states, especially if we name them. Again, the research says just naming a feeling helps us get greater control over it. So safety strategies, I've got all of these on the highperformancerelationships.com website. You can dive into them in more detail. I want to highlight the building blocks for today, but they are slow your state and story. The A in safety is ask and acknowledge. The F is focus on alignment or what you agree with versus just what you don't agree with. The E is empathize, and empathize with compassion for the understanding of the other person's perspective. T is take turns, and that one is so critical. Every process I set up with teams ensures that they have a good opportunity to take turns and hear from everybody. It's the number one thing you can do to improve team effectiveness, and it's very simple. It's very simple, but it's not easy to do. Teams kind of struggle to actually take turns effectively, so you can really help that as a coach. And then the 6th one is, at the end of conversations, help teams really acknowledge what they're saying yes to. What are the decisions and actions that they're really agreeing to? Or if they can't get to where they want to go, to yield, take a break, and recommit to come back and follow through on their conversations at another time. So those are the 6 safety strategies, and that's your coaching tool number 4. When I talk with teams about this, and I've spent a lot of time with you today, and I spend a lot of time with my teams talking about it because safety is the foundation. So here's coaching tool number 5. I will ask teams to reflect on what have they been afraid to say to each other, and what have they been afraid to put a voice to in their team. And then for them to think about what might the other person or people on the team be afraid to say. And then to reflect on how could they make their team safer to be more open and vulnerable for themselves and then for others. And taking your teams through those kind of reflective questions is a good way to get them talking about what creates safety or bust safety for them. So let's go over to purpose. This is the 2nd building block. And purpose is often like this. this cartoon, I think, sums it up. A lot of leaders are interested in the money, and they say, show me the money. And in this cartoon, we've got someone showing the dollar sign, and the team says, that's not bad, but most other consultants gave us mission statements with more detail. And we definitely know that purpose is an important piece for millennials. In fact, when they are asked what's most important in a job for them, purpose ranks over pay, which doesn't mean you can't pay, you don't pay millennials. It doesn't mean they'll work for free, but it means that if they are not finding higher meaning in their job, they will leave a job even if the pay is better than one that they're going to, if they feel like it's more meaningful. So purpose is critical, and I believe that purpose provides the energy to overcome problems, and the research shows that when we are highly engaged, highly committed, highly on mission and on purpose, we are more willing to persevere and use discretionary effort, which is an important piece in the teams I'm working with today. How do we get our people to be engaged and use discretionary effort? So remember Paula. Paula said things like, you know, our goals are not aligned, we sometimes are at odds with each other, and we definitely aren't pulling in the same direction. What Paula's really talking about is purpose. And so when you hear those statements from people in your team, you know this is a building block that needs to be strengthened. Here's how I often will strengthen it with teams, is we want to talk about what's their common compelling purpose. And I ask them, how much have you talked about your mutual purpose? Or have you just made assumptions about it? And I ask them to reflect on how they could become more aligned. And then I lead them through another exercise. This is coaching tool number 7. And I ask them to reflect on their own purpose. What is it that makes you come to work every day? What are you excited to contribute at work and to the team? So I get them to reflect on their own purpose. And then I have them share their purpose, taking turns, going around the room so that they hear what's the purpose and what's meaningful to everybody in the room. And then I have them reflect on what are the themes, what are they hearing as their common compelling purpose. And then we start to link that to the business purpose. How does their own meaning and purposefulness get linked into the business? This personal and mutual purpose exploration is your coaching tool number 7 that you can use with teams. So let's move to structure. We're just doing a very high-level overview. There's a lot more information on the highperformancerelationships.com website than I'm sharing with you today, but this gives you a frame for what you can learn, and also in the book there's a lot more information. So let's look at structure. The structure is really deciding what you want and then designing your success. How do we make sure that we have all the pieces in place? So structure includes several things. It includes the goals, our interdependent goals. What are we here to do together? It includes having the right people and the right skills to deliver and get the results. It includes having clear roles and responsibilities. It includes the resources. Do we have the time, information, money we need? And it includes the working agreements. This one's critical. Working agreements, or sometimes people call them norms, these are the explicit things that we say about how we're going to work together. And I think this cartoon kind of sums it up. Any idiot can face a crisis. It's the day-to-day living that wears you out. This is why working agreements are so important, because we all have a different idea about what's professional, what the expectations for communication are, how fast should we respond to emails, how should our meeting protocols go, and if we don't talk about that explicitly, we do wear each other out just through that day-to-day living. This whole piece of team effectiveness and structure is so important that Ruth Wegman and Richard Hackman did research, and Richard Hackman said, you know, after studying high-performance teams, I have found structure and design to be so effective, I think it contributes to this amount of team effectiveness. Do you think it's 40%, 50%, 60%? What are the guesses there, Carl?
They're coming in. I see some 60%, 60% or more. Yes, we definitely get a winner with 60%.
Yes, and I think that statistic is really out in the team coaching community a lot now. People see that and hear that everywhere. So when we heard that complaint from Steve, and he said, you know, on our team, we just don't have clear roles and responsibilities. We're stepping on each other's toes, or else things are falling through the gaps. Steve's really talking about structural elements. So what I do, and this is coaching tool number 8 for you, is I work with teams usually in a 1 or 2 day team launch, and I help them create a team charter on a page that really gets their vision, mission, roles, values, working agreements, goals, and success measures in point form on a page that they can refer back to, that's visual, that they can see, and that they can modify as needed over time as they have members come in or leave. And it gives them a way to say, this is what we're about as a team. Highly effective and helpful coaching tool. And working agreements are so important because in the absence of rules, people make up their own, but rules without relationship leads to rebellion. So we really need to get this structure in place for teams as team coaches. All right, so here's coaching tool number 9. As you share these structural elements with teams, ask them which structural element do they feel they could enhance in their team, and get them to identify it and then work with some ways to strengthen that particular structural element. So let's touch on camaraderie. This is how people usually think about team development and team coaching. This cartoon, I'm confident that with the right mix of role-playing exercises and prescription medication, we'll make a cohesive team. And for my teams, prescription medication often looks like, you know, let's go for drinks after work. And that's helpful. Definitely important, but again, it's insufficient to build camaraderie. We can't always be going out for lunches and drinks and breaks. So I talk with my teams about what are other ways we can build camaraderie. So remember, Chris said, you know, the problem with this team is we just do not have enough fun together. Well, what she was talking about was camaraderie. So I talk with teams about how can you just even have a little more humor and play in your team meetings. Maybe start off your team meeting with what's one thing interesting that happened, and take 5 minutes to just have some social dialogue at the beginning, but in a turn-taking way. Go around. What's one thing fun that's happened for you over the last week? Get them to share. Get them to listen for the commonalities and look for connection points as they listen to each other, because commonalities and connection is really what helps build camaraderie. Another thing I do is I share with my teams the statistics on gratitudes. And a lot of teams are, again, allergic to talking about gratitude. So I share with them this idea of when we appreciate, and I use different language in business, sometimes I use appreciations or even focusing on successes. And when I share that with teams, then they can start to have more dialogue about what's positive. Remember our ratio, 5-to-1 positive to negative? Sometimes we have to help teams bring out the positive with each other. So your coaching tool number 10 is to have team coaching sessions where you give them an opportunity to talk about, for example, what do you most appreciate about this team? All right, I'm going to flip through that one. So camaraderie is built on play, humor, 5-to-1 positive to negative, gratitude and appreciation, and having a sense of we-ness. So this next coaching tool number 11, is share what builds camaraderie beyond going out for drinks, and ask the team what would increase the respect, acceptance, and or camaraderie on our team. And I recently did this with a team who has put into place a lot of camaraderie building things, like even just making a point to walk to meetings together. They come from different areas of buildings, and just to get together, do more commuting together. Camaraderie is important because it leads to repair. We need to load up the light side to deal with the dark side, and my friend Denise Still and I, who's also a coach, have talked a lot about this idea of the light side of relationships is the camaraderie piece. The dark side is the conflict piece that many of you pulled out. When we have conflict, we need to repair. Sometimes we get called in to teams because this kind of thing is going on, this back and forth backstabbing, arguing. And what we know from the research from John Gottman is that if a conversation starts poorly with either criticism or defensiveness or stonewalling or even some shutting down or contempt, things like, you know, I can't believe you're saying that again, or eye rolling is what contempt often looks like in team meetings. If that starts to happen, especially within the first 3 minutes of a meeting, how likely do you think that conversation or meeting is going to get better after 15 minutes? What are you seeing? Is it 4%, 10%, or 14%, Carl?
I'm seeing a lot of 4s appearing in my screen. I also see a 10, but the majority goes for 4. Yes.
All right, it is 4%. If we can't get control right away and start off gently and easily with their meetings in a positive manner, we are likely not to get on track again, which is why I often start my team coaching sessions with, what's one success you've had in the business? Let's just take 30 seconds per person to go around and share one, or what's one thing that you appreciate about this team, because I want to set a positive frame for them.
Hello, Jacqueline, are you still there?
Yeah, just listen to this. Sorry, I had a slide in there. It wasn't supposed to come on so fast. Sorry, folks. I love that song. It's by Arizona. What are some alternatives to Screw It, I Blew It? And I'm sorry. I play that song for my husband often, and it's not his favorite song, but it is mine, because I'm sorry is a really good repair tool when we screw up with our clients. So remember Randy? Randy was the reluctant leader, and he came in and was feeling punished with this team who's very disconnected, and Randy needs to repair. So I'm going to just let you know there is a repair toolkit on the website, highperformancerelationships.com, with 6 research-based repair tools. The bottom line about repair, because we know intuitively lots of these, we need to apologize, we need to make I statements, we need to, though, reach out to people, and we need to respond to people. So rather than complaining, we need to say, here's what we want, and ask for it so that other people can give it. That's the key with repair. That's your coaching tool number 12. The other thing I do for my teams is I let them know that our relationship bridges are always under construction, that repair is an inevitable piece of team effectiveness and relationship effectiveness. So it doesn't mean that something is absolutely unfixable. It means that we have an opportunity to create greater team satisfaction and team loyalty by doing repairs. So here's your 13th coaching tool, which is to help your team reflect. Have they had a relationship accident? You know, a misunderstanding or a miscommunication is what I mean by a relationship accident that's not been fully repaired. Is there an important conversation they've been avoiding that they need to have? And is there a repair that they could offer? And have them actually consciously think through what repairs might need to be made within the whole team or among team members. So this could even be an individual dialogue that you help leaders have. So basically, as we sum up this, and I want to quickly go into the case study, there's 5 building blocks: safety, purpose, structure, camaraderie, and repair. When we look at that team that I showed you, the faces of the carnage, we can teach them the skills, we can share them this data, but the bottom line is they need to be committed. They need to want to build a high-performance team to actually create success. So they need the toolkit, but they need to bring their hearts and their desire to be a high-performance team. And I sometimes get leaders who go, you know what, this is a lot of work. I don't have to have these kind of conversations. We will get good. Everybody is professional. We'll do fine. We'll figure it out just by working together. And that's true. You can get good by default. But what I know is that teams only get great by design. And the
Jacqueline,
5 building blocks
Jacqueline,
give you a design.
You have 5 more minutes left.
Okay, thank you. So I want to share with you quickly the case study. I use this framework all the time with my teams, either explicitly or just even for my own assessment. So I want to share one that I used explicitly. This is a management consulting company. They had a business unit team of 6 people, president, VP, 3 key leaders, and that had 1 large program and 1 key leader of 2 smaller programs. Here were the issues. The mission was not aligned. They did not agree on it. The large program was overly powerful and had a stronger voice than everybody else on the team. There was some different ideologies about actually what they believed about what they should be doing, and there were major personality style differences. Some of you talked about that at the beginning. Which building blocks do you think you focus on with this team? What are you seeing, Carl?
Not a lot yet, but you can still give your answers there, participants. Very welcome. I see safety, I see purpose. Whoa, 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 I see a lot now. Safety, prayer, still alive and active. Structure, purpose, yes, yes, purpose. That's the winner, purpose.
Purpose is absolutely, yes. Purpose, which can lead to some structural issues because certainly that large program is overly powerful, has too much of a voice. That's a structural issue. Absolutely. And safety, because they have major style differences, so there's conflict. Ideological, which is, you know, their belief systems, which can really impact safety. So absolutely, those were the building blocks we focused on. And some of you might be, you know, remember I've done some team development, team coaching things on high performance, on the high performance team coaching system. This is how I bring the two together. I use the high performance relationship assessment and listening and what there's going on for the team. That's the assessment piece of the team coaching system. And then I took a compressed team coaching approach with this team. Actually, the president wanted to see major results in 2 months. So we worked together weekly for 2 months. We did assessments. I had interviews with them. I did individual coaching for the leader to support that leader. We redesigned the business unit. The person who said structure, we absolutely started to equalize the programs a little bit more. And we did a team launch to create that team charter over 4 half days where we focused on what's the common language for high performance teams and relationships, which actually started to get people to monitor their behavior more effectively. And we then did some ongoing team coaching. There were some major repairs that needed, and so we actually had some small group sessions as well. So there were a lot of pieces, and what I hope is that, you know, when you think about this, you get the kind of outcomes that my team got. They had less conflict, they had increased respect, they had some tools to be able to repair and redirect their conversations by using some of the working agreements we created in the charter. We did get them to have a clearer mission statement, and they did make some changes to the programs and the structure. So those relate to all the building blocks. I guess we've only got, you know, a minute or two left. Carl, was there any burning question that you saw coming out that I should address before we just wrap up?
Not questions that should be really here treated publicly. There was one question about the precise mentioning of your website, the URL of your website, and there was another question about the what and hows of your intensive research. Now, I invite the ones that have that have asked that question to contact Jacqueline on a private level, because this is going to bring us here a little bit too far. So if there's one or two last questions that go into the contents, they would be welcome. Wow, there are a lot of questions. I will pick out two. By the way, because I see that it's well, in European time it's now 6 o'clock. For you it's probably 12 o'clock for most of you. So for those having to leave, the second password